The Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences stood as a monument to intellectual superiority, its spiraling towers reaching toward distant stars like metallic fingers grasping for cosmic secrets. Within its polished halls, the brightest minds from 17 different species gathered to prove their worth. Today, however, one particular classroom would witness something that would shake the very foundations of their understanding. Professor Vex'thani, a towering Qwalari with 6 arms and skin that shifted colors based on his emotional state, surveyed his mixed-species advanced problem-solving class with barely concealed disdain. His skin currently displayed a smug purple-gold pattern that his students had learned to interpret as extreme condescension. "Today, young saplings," he began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, "you will face the Morthak Enigma box." He gestured with 4 of his arms toward a complex geometric structure sitting on his desk. The device appeared to be made of interlocking metal segments, each surface covered in symbols that seemed to shift and writhe when viewed directly. The class leaned forward with obvious excitement. The Enigma box was legendary among academic circles, a puzzle so complex that it typically required entire teams of graduate-level students working for months to solve. Some said it contained ancient technological secrets, others claimed it was merely an exercise in advanced spatial reasoning. What everyone agreed upon was this: it was impossible to solve quickly. "The rules are simple," Vex'thani continued, his tone dripping with academic superiority. "You have exactly 4 standard hours to work on this puzzle. You may work individually or form teams. Previous records show that the fastest solution time was achieved by a team of 12 Qeth'val mathematicians who managed to unlock it in 3 hours and 47 minutes. He paused dramatically, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled students. There was Qeth'val, a brilliant crystalline being whose faceted head contained 3 separate processing centers. Beside her sat Tar, whose tentacled species was renowned for their ability to manipulate 17 different objects simultaneously. In the back corner lurked Qeth'val, a shadow creature whose people had mastered dimensional mathematics before most species had figured out fire. And then there was Marcus Webb. The human sat in the 3rd row, looking utterly unremarkable compared to his exotic classmates. Average height, brown hair that seemed perpetually messy, and wearing what appeared to be some sort of primitive fabric, covering that his species called jeans, and a hoodie. He was currently leaning back in his chair with an expression that Vex'thani had learned to recognize as dangerously bored. "I will now distribute the puzzle," Vex'thani announced, beginning to levitate copies of the Enigma box to each student's desk using his telekinetic abilities. But as the professor began his careful, ceremonious distribution, something unprecedented happened. Marcus Webb stood up. He walked down to the front of the classroom with the casual confidence of someone heading to grab a sandwich, reached out, and simply picked up the original Enigma box from the professor's desk. The classroom fell silent. Even the usually chattering Physnic twins stopped their constant electromagnetic buzzing. Vex'thani's skin shifted to a shocked pale yellow. "Mr. Webb, what exactly do you think you're doing?" the professor demanded, his 6 arms spreading in what his species considered a threatening display. Marcus looked up from the box with mild surprise, as if he'd forgotten anyone else was in the room. "Oh, sorry, Professor. I was just taking a look at this thing. Pretty neat design, actually." "Taking a look?" Vex'thani's voice rose to a pitch that made several students wince. "This is a precision instrument that requires careful study and methodical approach. You cannot simply—" Click. The sound was soft, almost musical, but it cut through the professor's tirade like a plasma blade through tissue paper. Every eye in the room focused on Marcus's hands, where one section of the Enigma box had just rotated 90 degrees with perfect smoothness. Marcus said, tilting his head slightly. "That was easier than I thought." He twisted another section. Click. Then another. Click. Vex'thani's skin was now cycling rapidly between colors, a sure sign of extreme agitation. "Impossible!" You cannot simply manipulate the surfaces without understanding the underlying mathematical principles. The quantum resonance frequencies alone require... Click, click, click. Marcus wasn't even looking at what he was doing anymore. His hands moved with the casual efficiency of someone solving a puzzle they'd seen 1,000 times before, fingers finding the right pressure points and rotation angles, as if guided by instinct rather than intellect. The other students began to murmur among themselves. Qeth'val's 3 processing centers were all focused on Marcus with laser-like intensity, trying to calculate the probability of what they were witnessing. Namtar's tentacles were waving in what his species called mathematical distress. Even Qeth'val had materialized more solidly than usual, his shadow form betraying genuine surprise. "This is absolutely ridiculous," muttered Shankar, a proud member of the hegemony whose people had conquered 4 star systems through pure intellectual superiority. "He's clearly just randomly manipulating the mechanisms. There's no way he actually understands." Click! Ding! The Enigma box suddenly unfolded like a flower blooming in fast forward. Layers of metal peeled back, revealing an intricate core that pulsed with soft blue light. Ancient symbols appeared in the air above it, displaying what was unmistakably a solution confirmation sequence. Total elapsed time, 37 seconds. The silence in the classroom was so complete that you could have heard a neutron drop. Marcus looked at the opened puzzle box, then at the floating symbols, then at the class full of gaping aliens. "Oh," he said with genuine surprise. "Was there supposed to be something inside it?" Vex'thani's skin had gone completely white, a color that his species only displayed in cases of extreme shock or existential crisis. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. How did you do that?" Marcus shrugged, the gesture carrying a casualness that seemed to physically pain several of the more academically minded students. "I don't know. It just seemed obvious. Like, you can see where the stress points are in the metal, right? And the way the symbols line up, they're basically telling you which way each section wants to rotate. It's kind of like those puzzle boxes my grandmother used to give me for Christmas, except fancier." "Your grandmother?" Vex'thani's voice cracked slightly. "Yeah, she was always getting me these wooden puzzle boxes from this little shop in downtown Portland. Nothing this high-tech, obviously, but the basic principle is the same. You just have to feel for the mechanism's natural flow instead of fighting against it." Qeth'val's primary processing center suddenly flared bright blue. "Wait," she said, her crystalline voice sharp with realization. "Are you telling us that your species regularly gives complex mechanical puzzles to their juveniles as recreational gifts?" "Well, yeah," Marcus replied, apparently missing the profound implications of this statement. "I mean, not everyone's into them, but they're pretty common. My little cousin Jake got his first one when he was like 6 years old." A collective shudder ran through the classroom. The idea that humans casually distributed advanced spatial reasoning challenges to their children as entertainment was both fascinating and deeply disturbing to species who considered such puzzles the pinnacle of intellectual achievement. Namtar's tentacles writhed in distress. "But the mathematical calculations alone, the quantum resonance frequencies, the 17-dimensional geometric principles." Marcus looked genuinely confused. "Dude, you're way overthinking it. It's just a box with some moving parts. You don't need to calculate quantum whatever, you just need to pay attention to what the box is trying to tell you." "What the box is trying to tell you?" Vex'thani repeated, his skin now shifting through colors that didn't exist in any known spectrum. "Mr. Webb, this is a precision instrument designed by some of the greatest minds in galactic history. It does not try to tell anyone anything." "Sure it does," Marcus said, picking up one of the undistributed puzzle boxes from a nearby desk. "Look, see how this section here is slightly raised compared to the others? That's because there's spring tension underneath it. And see these grooves in the metal? They're not decorative. They're indicating the direction the piece wants to slide." He demonstrated by gently pressing the raised section, which slid smoothly to one side with a soft click. "The whole design is basically a conversation between you and the mechanism," Marcus continued, his hands already working on the second puzzle. You just have to be willing to listen instead of trying to brute force your way through it. Click, click. The second Enigma box began to unfold. Several students made sounds that could only be described as academic whimpering. "This is impossible," Shenkar declared, his usually confident demeanor cracking. "My people have studied these devices for generations. We have entire universities dedicated to understanding their principles. You cannot simply intuitive your way through problems that require advanced mathematical frameworks." Marcus glanced up from the now opening second puzzle box. Why not? The question hung in the air like an unexploded plasma grenade. Why not, indeed? The assumption that complex problems required complex solutions was so fundamental to galactic academic thought that questioning it seemed almost heretical. "Because," Vex'thani said slowly, clearly struggling to articulate something that had never needed articulation before, "because that is simply not how intelligence works. Advanced problems require advanced solutions. Sophisticated mechanisms require sophisticated understanding. This is the foundation of all academic achievement." "Says who?" Marcus asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. And that was when Professor Vex'thani realized that he might have made a terrible mistake in dismissing humans as academically inferior. The greatest minds in galactic history?" Vex'thani offered weakly. "Okay, but did they ever actually try just playing around with the boxes to see what would happen?" Marcus asked. "Because I'm getting the feeling that maybe they spent so much time thinking about the problem that they forgot to actually interact with it." He finished opening the second puzzle box and casually moved to a third one. This time, several students pulled out recording devices, determined to document whatever impossible thing was about to happen. "You see," Marcus continued, his hands moving with practiced efficiency across the puzzle's surface. "Humans have this thing where we like to figure out how stuff works by poking at it. We call it tinkering. Some of our best discoveries happen because someone was bored and decided to see what would happen if they tried something weird." Click, click, slide. Ding. Third puzzle box opened. Total time, 41 seconds. Qeth'val materialized more fully, his shadow form taking on an almost solid appearance. "This defies all logical parameters," he whispered. "The probability calculations alone suggest that what we are witnessing should be mathematically impossible." "Maybe your math is wrong," Marcus suggested, helpfully. The sound that escaped from Qeth'val's throat was like the dying breath of a dying star. "Our math," said Qeth'val slowly, all three of her processing centers now glowing at maximum intensity, "has conquered galaxies. Our math has unlocked the secrets of faster-than-light travel. Our math has mapped the quantum foundations of reality itself." "Cool," Marcus said, moving to a fourth puzzle box. "But can your math open these boxes?" Click. The fourth box began to unfold before any of the aliens could formulate a response. That was when Physnik Alpha, one of the electromagnetic twins, suddenly sparked with excitement. "Wait! I understand now. The human is using a completely different cognitive approach. Instead of analyzing the problem theoretically, he's engaging with it experientially." "That's a fancy way of saying playing with it," Marcus agreed cheerfully. "But that's exactly the point." Physnik Beta chimed in, their shared excitement causing small electrical discharges to arc between them. "Our species have become so focused on theoretical understanding that we've forgotten the value of direct experiential learning." Vex'thani's skin was now cycling through colors that several students were fairly certain were physically impossible. "Are you suggesting," he said in a voice that could have frozen helium, "that this entire class has been approaching the problem incorrectly?" "Not incorrectly," Marcus said, finishing the fourth puzzle box and reaching for a fifth. "Just unnecessarily complicated? Like, you're all super smart, obviously, way smarter than me. But maybe sometimes being too smart makes things harder instead of easier." He paused in his manipulation of the fifth box to look directly at the professor. "I mean, think about it. if you spend all your time calculating the theoretical optimal solution, you might miss the fact that there's a really simple practical solution right in front of you. Simple? Shenkar's voice rose to a near shriek. These puzzles represent the pinnacle of engineering complexity. Sure, Marcus agreed. But complex engineering doesn't necessarily mean complex operation. Like, your brains are incredibly complex, right? But you don't need to understand neurobiology to think with them. You just think. Click. Whir. Ding. The fifth puzzle box opened. And that was when Professor Vex'thani realized that everything he thought he knew about intelligence, about problem solving, about the very nature of academic achievement, might need to be completely reconsidered. "Mr. Webb," he said carefully, his skin now a deep contemplative blue, "would you be willing to explain your methodology in detail?" Marcus looked genuinely surprised by the request. Sure, but I'm not sure there's much to explain. I just sort of feel what the box wants to do and help it do that." "Feel what it wants to do," Vex'thani repeated slowly. "Yeah, like, every mechanism has a natural way it wants to move, right? If you try to force it to move differently, you'll just break it or get stuck. But if you work with the mechanism instead of against it," he demonstrated by picking up another box and holding it gently, his fingers tracing its surface with something approaching reverence. "See? This one's telling me that it wants to rotate clockwise first, then slide this panel to the left, then, yeah, there we go. Click, click, slide, ding." Sixth box opened. The classroom was now in what could only be described as a state of academic shock. Students who had dedicated their entire lives to the pursuit of intellectual superiority were watching a human treat their most challenging puzzles like children's toys. And the most disturbing part was that it was working. "This is unprecedented," whispered Dr. Qeth'val, the department head who had appeared in the doorway at some point during the demonstration. Her usually pristine feathers were ruffled with excitement and confusion. "In 300 years of teaching, I have never witnessed anything like this." Marcus glanced up from the seventh puzzle box he was working on. "Oh, hey, Dr. Q. Didn't see you come in." "Mr. Webb," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Do you have any idea what you've just accomplished?" Marcus looked around at the growing pile of opened puzzle boxes, then at the faces of his classmates, then back at Dr. Qeth'val. "I opened some boxes." The sound that escaped from several students simultaneously could best be described as the academic equivalent of a death rattle. "Mr. Webb," Dr. Qeth'val continued, "you have just solved in minutes what typically takes our best students months to accomplish. More importantly, you have done so using a cognitive approach that challenges our fundamental understanding of how complex problems should be solved." Marcus blinked. Is that good or bad? And that question would haunt the Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences for years to come, because the answer, as they were all beginning to realize, was both. 3 hours later, the advanced problem-solving classroom had been transformed into what could only be described as an academic crime scene. 17 opened Enigma boxes sat in neat rows across Marcus's desk, their ancient cores pulsing with satisfied blue light. The remaining students had formed a semicircle around the human, watching him work with a horrified fascination usually reserved for natural disasters. Dr. Qeth'val had called in reinforcements. "This is absolutely preposterous," declared High Scholar Trixamid, his crystalline exoskeleton clicking with agitation as he examined the opened puzzles. "These devices were created by the first builders, beings of such intellectual superiority that modern science can barely comprehend their achievements. They are not toys." Marcus looked up from the 18th box he was working on, genuine concern crossing his features. "Oh man, I really hope I'm not breaking anything important. Should I stop?" "No!" The response came from every alien in the room simultaneously, creating a sound like a small sonic boom. "I mean," Dr. Qeth'val corrected hastily, "please continue." "For science." High Scholar Trixamid's exoskeleton shifted to a deep amber color, indicating profound intellectual distress. Dr. Qeth'val, surely you cannot be suggesting that we learned from this random manipulation of sacred artifacts? Random? Marcus asked, pausing in his work. Dude, there's nothing random about this. Every move is deliberate. It's just that the deliberation happens through touch rather than calculation. Through touch, Trixamid repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. Young human, these puzzles incorporate 17-dimensional mathematics, quantum field manipulations, and temporal resonance cascades. You cannot possibly claim to understand such concepts through mere physical contact. You're right, Marcus agreed cheerfully. I have no idea what any of those things mean, but I don't need to understand them to work with them. The High Scholar's exoskeleton turned a color that didn't have a name in any known language. That statement is a logical impossibility. Is it, though? Marcus asked, his hands never stopping their gentle exploration of the puzzle's surface. Like, do you understand exactly how your brain processes visual information? All the neural pathways and chemical reactions and electrical impulses? Well, no, but that is hardly. But you can still see, right? You don't need to understand the mechanism to use it effectively. Click, slide, whir. The 18th box began its opening sequence. High Scholar Trixamid made a sound like grinding glass. That is completely different. Vision is a natural biological function. So is problem solving, Marcus pointed out. Humans have been figuring out how things work for like 200,000 years. We built tools and shelters and figured out agriculture and medicine, all without understanding the underlying scientific principles. We just tried stuff and paid attention to what worked. Dr. Qeth'val's feathers were now standing completely upright, a sure sign of extreme intellectual excitement. Mr. Webb, are you saying that your species approaches complex problems through experiential iteration rather than theoretical analysis? I guess. We call it trial and error, but yeah, pretty much. Professor Vex'thani, who had been silently watching from the corner while his skin cycled through colors of existential crisis, suddenly spoke up. But that approach is so primitive, so inefficient. Why waste time with trial and error when you can calculate the optimal solution? Marcus shrugged, a gesture that was becoming increasingly painful for the assembled academics to witness, because sometimes the optimal theoretical solution isn't the actual optimal solution, and sometimes the thing you think is complex is actually pretty simple once you stop overthinking it. Stop overthinking, High Scholar Trixamid whispered, as if Marcus had just suggested they stop breathing. Yeah, like, watch this. Marcus picked up the 19th puzzle box and held it up for everyone to see. Now, you could spend hours mapping out all the mathematical relationships between these moving parts, calculating stress vectors and rotational dynamics and whatever. Or ... He closed his eyes and ran his fingers lightly over the box's surface, his expression peaceful and focused. You could just listen to what it's trying to tell you. Feel where the tension is. Notice which parts want to move and which ones are holding back. Work with the design instead of trying to dominate it. His hands moved with fluid grace, finding pressure points and rotation angles that seemed obvious once he demonstrated them, but had remained hidden 2 centuries of mathematical analysis. Click, click, slide, rotate, ding. The 19th box opened in 23 seconds. Impossible, breathed Ythmore, his shadow form flickering with distress. The probability matrices indicate that intuitive problem-solving should fail catastrophically when applied to systems of this complexity. Maybe your probability matrices are incomplete, Marcus suggested gently. The sound that escaped from the gathered academics was like the collective sigh of 1,000 dying theorems. That was when Dr. Qeth'val had her breakthrough moment. Wait, she said slowly, her voice filled with dawning realization. Mr. Webb, how long did it take your species to develop spaceflight? Marcus scratched his head thoughtfully. I'm not great with history, but I think it was like 60-something years from the Wright brothers to the moon landing? Maybe a bit more? 60 years, Dr. Qeth'val repeated faintly. From powered flight to interplanetary travel in 60 years. Is that fast? Marcus asked. High Scholar Trixamid's exoskeleton made a noise like cracking crystal. Mr. Webb, it took my people 4,000 years to progress from atmospheric flight to space travel. We spent 2 millennia alone on the theoretical frameworks necessary to understand orbital mechanics. Huh, Marcus said, reaching for the 20th puzzle box. Why didn't you just build some rockets and see what happened? Because, Trixamid said through what sounded like gritted teeth. Reckless experimentation with barely understood principles could result in catastrophic failure. Well, yeah, sometimes, Marcus agreed. But that's how you learn what doesn't work. Plus, catastrophic failure can actually be pretty educational if you survive it. Professor Vex'thani's skin had gone completely transparent, revealing the panicked pulsing of his internal organs. Your species learns through catastrophic failure. Among other things, yeah. We've got this saying, failure is the best teacher. Some of our greatest discoveries happened because someone was trying to do one thing, screwed it up completely, and accidentally discovered something way more important. Click, click, whir, ding. 20th box opened. This is madness, Shenkar declared, his usually perfect composure cracking like eggshell. You cannot build a civilization on trial and error. You need proper planning, theoretical foundations, systematic approaches to problem solving. Sure, Marcus said agreeably. Those things are useful too. But they're tools, not religions. Sometimes the best plan is to not have a plan and just see what happens. Dr. Qeth'val was now frantically taking notes on a device that was smoking slightly from overuse. Mr. Webb, this adaptive problem-solving approach, is it common among humans? Pretty common, yeah. I mean, not everyone's good at it, and some people prefer to plan everything out in advance. But most of us are okay with winging it when we have to. Winging it, she repeated, her voice filled with academic horror and fascination. Yeah, just making it up as you go along, improvising, flying by the seat of your pants. High Scholar Trixamid's exoskeleton cracked audibly. Your species has idioms specifically dedicated to unplanned problem-solving approaches. Oh man, tons of them, Marcus said cheerfully, working on the 21st box. We've got shoot from the hip. Play it by ear. Cross that bridge when we come to it. Throw caution to the wind. Stop, Trixamid cried. Please, no more. But Marcus was on a roll now. Oh, and my personal favorite, hold my beer and watch this. That one usually comes right before someone does something that's either brilliant or completely insane. Often simultaneously, I would imagine. Dr. Qeth'val murmured, her notes now generating small flames. Yeah, exactly. That's the beauty of it. Sometimes the line between genius and stupidity is so thin, you can't see it until after you've crossed it. Click, slide, rotate, ding. 21st box opened. Professor Vex'thani suddenly stood up so quickly that his chair fell over backward. His skin was now displaying colors that violated several laws of physics. I cannot take any more of this, he announced. For 3 centuries, I have dedicated my life to the pursuit of methodical, systematic, theoretical understanding. I have published 17 papers on the mathematical principles underlying Enigma box mechanisms. I have spent decades developing algorithms to predict optimal solution pathways. He gestured wildly at the growing collection of opened boxes. And now this human wanders into my classroom and treats my life's work like a children's game. Marcus looked genuinely sympathetic. Hey, I'm not trying to invalidate your research or anything. I'm sure all that mathematical stuff is really important for understanding how the boxes work on a deeper level. Then how can you solve them without understanding? Vex'thani demanded. I do understand them, Marcus replied. Just not the same way you do. You understand them with your brain. I understand them with my hands. He held up the 22nd box, his fingers already finding the right positions. This one's telling me it wants to spiral inward before expanding outward. The metal's got a kind of memory to it, like it remembers the shape it's supposed to take. Click, spiral, expand. Ding. 20-second box opened. The metal has memory, Dr. Qeth'val repeated, her recording device now producing small explosions. That's actually a surprisingly accurate description of the quantum memory matrices embedded in the first builder alloys. Marcus blinked. Really? Cool. I just thought it felt like it wanted to move in certain ways. High Scholar Trixamid made a sound like a dying computer. He intuitively grasped quantum memory matrices, through touch, without any theoretical framework whatsoever. Is that weird? Marcus asked. Weird, Trixamid whispered. He asks if it's weird. That was when the door burst open and Chancellor Mordak himself strode into the room, his massive reptilian form radiating authority and barely contained panic. What in the name of the first builders is happening in here? Half the academy is in uproar. There are reports of impossible puzzle solutions, theoretical frameworks crumbling, and professors having nervous breakdowns. He stopped short when he saw the rows of opened Enigma boxes. His massive head swiveled to stare at Marcus, who waved cheerfully. Oh, hey, are you the principal? Sorry about all the commotion. I was just working on some puzzles for class. Chancellor Mordak's voice, when he finally managed to speak, was barely above a whisper. You opened them. You opened them all. Well, not all of them, Marcus said modestly. There's still like 3 or 4 left. Want me to finish up? No! Yes! The Chancellor's massive form was trembling. Young human, do you have any idea what those devices are? Puzzle boxes? They are artifacts of the first builders, beings of such transcendent intelligence that we can barely comprehend the shadows of their achievements. Those puzzles have challenged the greatest minds in the galaxy for millennia. Huh, Marcus said thoughtfully. Well, they're pretty neat, I'll give you that. Really good craftsmanship. Whoever made them definitely knew what they were doing. Chancellor Mordak stared at him for a long moment, then slowly turned to address the assembled faculty. Dr. Qeth'val, I am hereby authorizing the immediate establishment of a new research division dedicated to studying human problem-solving methodologies. Already on it, Chancellor, she replied, her recording device now producing what appeared to be small mushroom clouds. High Scholar Trixamid, I want you to begin developing new curricula that incorporate experiential learning approaches alongside traditional theoretical frameworks. Trixamid's response was a sound like breaking glass mixed with the death cries of mathematics itself. Professor Vex'thani, I need you to... The Chancellor paused, noticing that Vex'thani was now curled up in a corner, rocking back and forth while his skin cycled through colors that hurt to look at directly. Perhaps we'll give the professor some time to process recent developments, Dr. Qeth'val suggested diplomatically. Chancellor Mordak nodded grimly, then turned back to Marcus. Mr. Webb, I have a proposition for you. Shoot, Marcus said, casually working on the 23rd puzzle box. How would you feel about teaching a masterclass on intuitive problem-solving? Marcus looked up from the box with genuine surprise. Really? You want me to teach, but I don't know anything about the theoretical stuff. Mr. Webb, Chancellor Mordak said solemnly, I am beginning to suspect that the theoretical stuff may not be as important as we thought. Click, slide, rotate, spiral, ding. The 23rd box opened, and with it, something fundamental shifted in the understanding of intelligence, education, and the nature of problem-solving itself. Marcus Webb, a human who had learned to solve puzzles from his grandmother's Christmas gifts, had accidentally revolutionized galactic academia. And the best part? He still had no idea what the big deal was. So, he said, reaching for the final puzzle box with a grin, who wants to learn how to listen to what things are trying to tell you? The sound that filled the classroom then was unlike anything heard before in the halls of the Galactic Academy. It was the sound of minds opening, of assumptions crumbling, and of an entire educational philosophy being turned upside down. It was the sound of learning something genuinely new. And in the end, that was the most human thing of all.